Welcome to the Dynasty Podcast. We are back after many of auction. Uh, what a great event that was. My boy Ben, myself, we're here to do a deep dive into what is the beast, the blue chip auction. What's up, dude? How was New York first and foremost? I want to hear about that. I know I'm sure there's some good stories. What were the top three highlights of your New York City NFT event, better known as Ape Fest, I believe?
Well, number one was the last event day. It was Thursday. and so all the events, there's 4 nights. The previous one, you could go every night. But now, because they had so many people and so much demand, that they limited it to 2 nights. So we went to the Ape Fest on Tuesday and Thursday. And Thursday was, they had a bunch of guys like open Spotty Wi-Fi, who's this rapper who does specifically like NFT raps, which are pretty funny. And then Lil Wayne played, and everything's open bar with like high end top. It's all top shelf shit, free.
So you have to have a membership, or you have to have an ape to get into these places.
An ape or a mutant, yeah. So there's 20,000 mutants, 10,000 apes. I don't know. Then ownership totals probably 15K ish, 18K ish between the two, because many people own multiples or own both. And so it was like Pier 17 in New York. So it's like right on the water on the rooftop deck. So the views are super sick of the city. And then it's like a real concert venue. All the food's included. They have like artisanal coffee, fucking great food, and like top shelf booze, and it's just all free. And they bring some pretty decent headliners. So it was Lil Wayne, and then that day Snoop Dogg and Eminem were going to drop a brand new video of a new song they did, which they both have apes. So Eminem has an ape and Snoop has an ape. Snoop is always wearing shit with his ape, like everywhere in public. And Eminem, not so much. There was like the whole rumor of the collaboration that was going to happen in Super Bowl. It was clearly that they were making this track, right? That they were making this video and this track, and that's what the collaboration actually ended up being. But Eminem and Snoop Dogg came out after Lil Wayne and presented the video. So we saw the video before anyone else did. And as soon as we saw it, like after the show was over, they dropped it on the internet.
Yeah, it was cool. The video was cool. It's all animated and
yeah, it's all the apes and animation and a lot of stuff that I'm like, I don't know, not to get into it, but that stuff I'm working on a side project that so it's really fascinating that it's getting that mainstream.
As an NFT collector and someone that's got some money invested in it, don't have an ape, but and I know this event was NFT wide. I mean, Ape Fest was a part of the NFT NYC thing, and they did something exclusive for their members. Did you get a sense? Obviously, it's a different crowd of folks that are that own apes, and they're still obviously bullish on those projects. Did you get a sense that everybody was still in high spirits in general in the NFT world due to the bear market and how things have looked over the last 3 months? Or do you think some of the intrigue has faded because people aren't making money hand over fist at this point?
I don't think the intrigue's faded with the people that are in the industry, because it's not always about this like valuation of like money and your stocks going up and performing. It's like kind of being involved and being part of like, I don't know, technology, membership, like evolution. And there's just a lot of everything's new. So everyone jokes that they're going to go get a job flipping burgers at McDonald's and are now eating top ramen every day, when the markets are where they are. I don't think it's that bad, but, I think everyone, clearly there's two sides of looking at these things. When shit's down, like if you're still spending what you were spending when shit was up, you're probably doing it wrong. But more importantly, if you have any capital, like you live for when it goes down. I saw Bitcoin was down like 7.5%, and I just fucking fist pumped in the air, man. I want it to go way down now, So I can, like, that's what happened last time. And then I can reallocate funds and attain much more crypto than I would have been able before and just ride out the storm. And then when it comes back again, like it has every cycle, and just like the stock market and just like everything that dips and goes down, like you find yourself in real good leverage positions to be able to do whatever the fuck you want, especially in this market where, there's NFTs, art, et cetera, that can go in there. But I think we're going to start seeing a lot more happen. Massive partnerships got announced after
Yeah.
NFTYC. I just saw one by Shopify, and the video they made was fucking incredible. Like they're just gonna start pushing, like, true market share into these worlds and make it more attainable. You have really large, like if you start kind of getting this stuff on, in the mainstream, and make it easy, because you and I know this is like, it's doable for us, but a lot of people are just going to be like, man, this is complicated. What the fuck is gas? What is all this shit you got to deal with? And it gets frustrating because it's easy to get burned if you're just recklessly going in there, as I have.
Yeah, I
at times.
saw, for instance, the Littles were there. I own several of those, as you well know. They did a deal with American Eagle, right? So they have
Yeah.
shirts now that are in American Eagle, right? Like, so now the main consumer that goes in there, a college kid that can get a cool shirt and be curious about what the Littles are, then correlate that to, oh, well, that's an NFT. I can go buy one for a couple $100 and own a part of this brand, essentially. Like, and if it makes
Yeah.
money, then I'm going to make money. And like, you start repping your brand, and people are curious, and then you want people to invest in it, you want people to talk to you about it, you want to communicate what it stands for, and like what the long-term play is. Like, that's why I'm still excited about the projects I'm invested in, because I don't think anybody was in it for short-term gains. But
Yeah, it's a lot of counterculture too. That's the thing,
sure.
that
Yep.
when you talk about whether something is disappearing, as long as it's continuing in counterculture, it doesn't matter what the fucking price is. That's just facts. Like that means the young kids and the young up and comers are fucking interested in it, and that means they're going to be interested in it moving forward. Do you have old geezers who don't give a shit? Well, fuck them. They're going to die soon. Sorry to be so fucking cold about it, but and that's what I've seen. Apparel lines, especially progressive apparel lines, man, they are all over this shit. All collaborations with any project that looks like it has a good drive or mission that they want to get behind. Gutter Cats, they had Puma, and they even like, fuck, dude, what was that? It's a high end like shoe company
just,
that was doing there.
Four Apes just like signed with Diesel. Diesel.
Yeah, and I saw that fucking store.
brand.
It was insane, man. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like they're branding their shit everywhere. You have fucking LaMelo Ball wearing Gutter Cat shoes, making the fucking assist of the year, the between the leg. There's just like,
Yeah.
it's in counterculture. It's in athletes. It's in musicians. It's like, if that doesn't tell you shit's happening, then what? Then I don't know what to tell you. If you want to just say, oh, somebody's like, oh, like, I probably had 20 people just like reach out, like, are you doing okay? I hear NFTs and crypto are down. I'm like, are you invested in anything?
Mm-hmm.
Are you in the stock market? Like, what's not down? I was like,
right.
oh, well, it just seems like you might have lost everything. I'm like, dude, you just have no idea what you're talking about, And it's like, yeah, things dip. Things might dip harder in crypto and in NFTs than they do, but like, until
they're probably in mutual funds that are spread, across like 500 different investments and haven't moved.
That's fine.
In 5 years. But...
yeah, and like that's the safe play, right? But
yeah, it's interesting.
I don't know. Like it's like nobody's concerned when you're in, and like you're in New York and you're in Times Square, and every single fucking billboard is used for a different collaboration project or advertisement for a fucking NFT. That shit ain't cheap. And it's like, it's like so loud, like in Times Square, just going, what the fuck is going on? This is so crazy. And more importantly, again, like you have this circling back. It's like, okay, Snoop Dogg and Eminem do their first collaboration like fucking 20 some years. And they're using their apes to like put a statement on this fucking new song they put out. And it's just like, shit. Like, I know you and I know Apin and like Timbaland and like all, I think Timbaland just dropped, he's doing his new video, is going to have his ape in a totally different type of animation style. And so you have people who are using the intellectual property of these things to make their brand, to like add to their fucking brand and to flex. And it's like, that's not going to if that was a flash in the pan, it would have already gone, right?
Yeah.
People would already be out of it and given up on it now that it's not worth as much as it used to be, right? So I don't know. I'm still excited for it. I'm just going to keep accumulating as long as I can make,
Maybe we should be doing another
paper money.
podcast called the Dynasty NFT world or something.
Yeah, right. We already took like half the podcast talking about even just the first event.
Yeah, we could talk about tokenomics and coins.
They're so
and all sorts
vast,
of things.
so much DAOs. Like fucking, I could go forever. But I'll summarize the other two that I thought were pretty awesome. Was I went to the Gutter Cat Gang meetup, which wasn't like a cool. It wasn't that big of a party. Like I didn't the daytime event that was like a meetup, but they had like street baller competitions and dunk contests and all this shit. And I was like, that's why I'm like, man, these guys are so counterculture, like figuring it out, like streetwear. It felt cool. You could just like see the vibe around. Not to mention, like, I'll tell you, like all these places you go to, whatever you think these people are that are behind Twitter or anything, everyone's fucking normal. Like everyone's just a dude or a chick, and they're all weird or quirky or just like, like nothing's like what you would think, especially because like I'm on Twitter, like following like thousands of apes. Like I get to meet like hundreds of them. And I'm like, dude, you're not at all who I thought. Cause just kind of like, I don't know, his assumption is everyone's just like flexing nice clothes and Lamborghinis and shit. And everyone's just a fucking average Joe who likes, just invests and does stuff.
I mean,
so that's the cool thing about
Twitter is what they say they are, though. Like, I mean,
no, it's not even that. It's just like you would expect with the valuations and the way people bought and stuff like that. You're just gonna like show up and it's like
douchebag central.
Yeah, a lot of pretentious people who don't want to talk to anyone. It's like fucking far opposite. Everyone wants to meet everyone, want to talk about what you're doing. They're interested in your project. That like it is the best networking fucking section of any shit I've ever been to in my life, because you cut through pretentiousness. Like nobody fucking is judging because everyone's trying to create and build on each other. It's really cool. It's really.
I have to imagine though that there's some people that, I mean, you're not like this, and that's why I like you, and you're really good at meeting people and just breaking barriers down. But there's got to be a lot of people that think that they're the smartest person in the room because they have an ape, right? And like they act like that in a way. Maybe not around other apes, but in people in general.
They might act like that on Twitter, man, but you meet them, they're fucking so fucking normal.
You can't fake it in real life, right?
It's all fucking personality. Like you should just notice everyone kind of picks their vibe on how they want to represent themselves digitally, and that's totally different. You meet them, like everyone's just, I don't know. It's weird. It's just like that was what I didn't really expect. I just like, it's just like our fantasy league. Like, it's like, we're going to meet everyone. We can have fucking perceptions about everyone. Right. But if you meet them, it's just like, oh, it's just fucking just like me. We're all just dudes fucking doing fantasy, and we're all pretty fucking normal, even if we have our quirks or whatever. Yeah. So anyways, that was cool. And then there was one daytime party I went to where they gave everyone a joint. Now I went to New York 20 years ago when weed was like super illegal, but they gave everyone a joint at the door when you went in, and inside, like everyone was smoking the joint. And like, I don't really smoke weed, but it was in this like kind of glass place. It was super sick. But after like 2 hours, I realized it was like, I was like almost as high as I've ever been. It was so fucking high because I was like hotboxed in this place where we're watching these performers, and like, so a lot of really cool pop-up events. And most of that stuff, like that one specifically, was promoting like weed brands that were using different NFTs as their IP and stuff like that.
It's
that was
perfect
cool
for that. I mean, obviously, like cannabis brands and stuff like that's kind of also new because it's newly legal in most states now. And you gotta be careful though, man. That stateside marijuana isn't what you're probably used to. That shit'll put you into outer space.
I didn't smoke a single puff. I was just like, I'm so lit right now. This is hilarious. Just sitting there, like,
and your wife was probably just like, I'm cool.
Yeah, she's fucking heaven, man. She's like, why is everyone giving me free weed? I'm like, I don't know. It's pretty cool.
Your boy's cool.
We were in Ape Fest. This is one thing I'll tell you. This is one of my wife just drop. This guy, like, he's like, he had this handful of fucking kind bud, and he's just like, hey, give me your hand. I'm like, nah, give it to my wife. Like, look at her face. And I'm like, hey, honey. And she's like, what? And then he just puts this entire handful of weed in her hand. She's like, what? And she's like, yeah, enjoy, and just walks away. She's just like, what the fuck? This guy just gave me like $200 worth of weed in my hand. What the hell's going on? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. This place is fucking crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So many ideas to discuss offline in regards to our
For
lives
sure.
and how that can.
But I'll tell you, man, there's too much shit to see. It was like, I think there was like thousands of events, man. There's
Well, New
hundred
York's
like,
a different place too, man. Like, fuck. I mean,
well, I
it's like,
just mean like so many people were so many projects and so much like even like the Web3 space. There was like seminars, like all kinds of stuff that didn't have to do a lot with NFTs. It's just like so much going on. Like I was looking at this spreadsheet and we are just like fucking getting nauseous. We're like, what do we even
mm,
go to?
yeah.
You know? And
I'm sure
so
you. I'm sure you made the most of it. All right, my man. Let's dig into this. I know we have a little bit of a timeline here. The auction, man, it went pretty smoothly. It didn't take as long
oh,
as
whatever.
I thought it was gonna take. It started off a little bit fiery as always, then kind of fizzled towards the end. What are your first thoughts about the auction? Maybe biggest surprise and or biggest mistake that you made now looking back. Just kind of some three good takeaways from the auction.
Well, early it felt like the spending was high, like always. And it wasn't.
Nope.
And you find that out later. And it's not just the first run. The first run, there was like some good deals, right? You see some shit, you're like, that was too low. Not enough people are in the auction yet to like feel each other out. And so, just like always, like early, there was just some really good deals. Something's kind of too expensive, but everyone's just kind of figuring out where the price points lay. And I think that next tier is where everyone was cautious. And I think that's where you should have, like, where the best spot with the strike was like right after the big run of the expensive guys and you had starters. I think the idea that there was a lot of starters left over was probably like a bad assumption, right? Because there was, there's DNs and stuff that were going really high, and you're like, fuck, man, like that seems too expensive. And then 2 days later, you're like, fuck, I wish I got that, you know?
Yeah. Well,
And that
especially if
seems,
there's some money left over in your account, right? Like it seemed like almost everybody, for the most part, there was quite a few people that kind of either came in late or didn't spend enough early that have $250 left over in their budget, and
yeah.
that seems to be a
And
no
last
no.
year, I felt like that third tier was where the value was last year. And this year it was the second tier. It was literally the next after the fury of really expensive guy. Like people were paying stuff, and at the time, you were just like, this still feels like it's peak and their money's going to run out. And it never does.
Yeah.
It just doesn't in this league, fucking never does. And so, we'll talk about it. But I think early in general was like where all the fair value was, and then everything just fucked. That third tier got fucked. I mean, you had tight ends going for so much money. Just shit just got really expensive for guys that were just. I mean, good luck.
Well, we all know why the tight end started going for a little bit more of an inflated price.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so Argo was on a mission to make all the tight ends go crazy high. But here's the thing. He did that early. And if you got a tight end while you were battling with them, you still won. Because later they got way more expensive. So like I took the approach, he did that with safeties as well. I know we're jumping around here, but like I kind of just said, fuck it, I'm gonna avoid his fucking bidding up like crazy, and I'll wait until he gets what he wants, and I'll go to the next tier. But problem was fucking there was no next tier, and safety should have been bought in that section when he's bidding everyone up. It's annoying, but you got to be diligent and just be willing to pay the 20% more than you probably were in those tiers, and you would have still got a guy for fair market value.
Right.
And I think that's, if any lesson I learned was just like, just because a certain position is getting bid up crazy early, like that might be an indicator that you should just continue to be in that fight and get what you can before, because then it just gets obscene.
So can you see my screen okay?
I can. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought it would be good to maybe go through positionally, like what we had talked about pre-auction. And by no means is this the entire list of players, or people might agree or disagree who were the best available. But generally speaking, these were the big names at each position. And so, sorry for all the color coordinating, but I wanted to make this as pretty as possible because I'm getting so much love for my Excel sheets. Um, what I did here was I put the players what they actually went for, and then in that column next to it, I put the points they scored last year, and then the third column in each position is the points or the amount of dollars per point per player. And that's kind of a new formula I'm working on in order to evaluate trades and players and just try to figure out how to roster and build a roster. And so then I gave a score based off of anybody underneath $1 for wide receivers got a green score, yellow like was I think $1 to $1.40, and then anybody above $1.40 was in the red. Now, obviously, in some of these situations, people got injured or they're in a new situation this year or whatever. Something could have went wrong last year. They could have an upgrade at quarterback, whatever it is. So you can't really. You have to be somewhat subjective when you're looking at these numbers. But I thought it was pretty interesting. One thing I did do as well was I looked at the total money spent on the top 10 players at the wide receiver position. I think there was 10 for the wide receiver. And then the average cost for those guys. And that just gave me an understanding of, okay, did I spend too much on the people I went after, or was I in line? And I did that for each position, which I thought was pretty interesting. So the overall feeling I got from doing this, and I also compared these numbers here in green, which is the average cost per point for the top 30 players at each position. So a good one of like the top, I'll just show you the sheet, top 30 at each position. This is Cooper Kupp, Adams, Deebo Samuel, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so their number equated to 60 cents per point. So that is top level production with the best players. Not always is that going to mean that there aren't guys that have a much lower score, and obviously you want that. For instance, my boy Laquan Treadwell, I think was like a point, at like 10 cents per point or something like that because he cost me $1 and he scored 80 points. So the key for me is then trying to find people that are maximizing your spend in points and then allowing you to free up cash for big purchases if you need to be. But any thoughts on this that jump out to you? I know I shared the spreadsheet with you. Just for conversational state, it can be about a specific player that went for too high or too low. My theories in general, the data. Take it away.
So, I mean, it's really, I don't know. Like I want to make a lot of conclusions out of it, but there are a lot of variants, right?
Yeah.
Like you pointed out. And, it's just like what we're seeing more and more with how we've done so many drafts and so many cycles of keeping players and extending players and players not reaching the free agency market. It's just like, it's so scarce. Like it's just shocking how fast the presumable top tier
Yep.
goes, and you could see that with the names that are on this top 10 list.
Yep.
Right. I mean, Demarcus Robinson's not on here for fuck's sake. It's like, I mean, we don't even know if the guy's going to score points. I mean, he will, but you know what I mean?
Well, he wasn't a free agent though.
What's that?
He wasn't a free agent. These are only the people on the screen are only people that were free agents that were able to be bid on, and that's their relative score. So that's what I was trying to figure out.
Well, Demarcus Robinson's the last receiver.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said Lawrence. My fault. Yeah.
No.
He's right here.
And so, yeah. And so, you see that and it's like, I don't know, like again, I'll look at it, take fucking Julio Jones. We'll get into it later, but I think a lot of these free agent gambles were probably going to be where the bread and butter was this year. I think I remember a few years ago, and I think this happens to be when we draft earlier or when we do the auction earlier. I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, last year we didn't do the auction until like July, like
Honestly, I
mid-July.
don't
I think we
remember.
did it late because I think there was a lot of information out and a lot of free agents had picked up teams at that point, right? So I noticed that there's a lot of unknown. There's just a lot of unknown for taking this big of risks,
Yeah, most
in
teams
these
haven't even
auctions.
put out their first depth chart, right? Like the actual team depth chart, right? Like that
No,
doesn't come for a while.
and depending on what site you like, all the depth charts are different. We have like discussed this with like who's saying somebody's running a 4-3 versus who's saying they're running a 3-4, and I don't remember the person who shout out to whoever did it. I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you credit. Somebody had mentioned that MFL takes their points or their projections per player from Fantasy Sharks, and that is all done by one guy. It is not accumulation of a bunch of guys like Football Guys or ESPN where you can average out and see what everyone's saying. It's one fucking guy who makes these in early June, maybe late May. There's so much shit that changes, right? And so I think when you're trying to decide, first of all, it's like a lot of like smokes and mirrors when you're like, oh, this guy's expected to get this many points, so he must be the starting safety. Man, if you don't go do fucking homework and realize that guy's not even in the mix, you might be going and paying like $45 for a guy who's not starting, And so I've noticed, and vice versa, just like, that's where it's like, if the more homework you kind of do with beat writers and kind of like pay attention to like where these rotations are going, I think that's where you actually can strike value, is staying away from those projections, right? Because it's like, oh, it says this guy's going to get 120 points, but it's like, well, no, actually the guy who's more likely to get that snap share since that information came out is this guy, and it says he's only supposed to get 35 points. You can get $10 safety. He's more than likely in a start or a rotation. Anyways, my point
I
is,
hear what you're saying. You can't take the data from the projections from our, MFL and use that to go after players in the auction. Like that's point number one. You have to do your own research and you have to use multiple sites.
but I think a lot of
Point,
people do. I think that's my point. I
yeah,
think you
and
see
I've been guilty
spending.
of that on defense specifically because I'm not as familiar with some of the deep guys. One thing that I will say for sure is there is no real deals in the auction, right? Like that's evident by some of the research I've done and some of the metrics I'm putting together. There's only relative deals within the auction, right? So it as an overall state, okay, you're never going to go spend money on a guy in the auction and get him unless he just does something abnormal, like in comparison to the top 30 players, like you're not going to get a steal in the auction like that, right?
Unless it's quarterback.
Right.
The quarterback market, it's completely fucking broken.
Or you're finding guys, and I have a few specific guys that I'll mention too. That for me it was like, again, not to bring up me, but it's just easier to remember my roster, is like Laquan Treadwell, Braxton Berrios, guys that completely outperformed where their price point was last year in the auction, right? Like finding guys like who I think this year could be those type of players on offense are like a Malik Turner or who was the other one that I wanted? He's on my list here. I had a pre-auction BC auction.
Ooh, we get all the dirt.
We get all the info. See, I don't care. I mean, it's over now. Malik Turner was on there. And ended up getting him. Like I think he can. I think he's in San Francisco. Yeah, and like signed a deal with him. He could be the number 2 receiver in San Francisco and cost $33 or whatever he is, and and score 150 points. Like you have to find guys like that on offense. Obviously, it's the same for defense. I think one thing that is pretty evident is that there was a lot of points accumulated at the safety position and relatively good deals comparative to and actually linebacker. Comparative to some of the other skill positions. Like you can get a safety that scores 140, 150 points and start 3 of them and spend $150. Like where can you do that at the wide receiver position? So like the strategy of getting safeties seems to be one that I overlooked, and it has been talked about as not being as valuable. But like I think in doing this research, like there certainly is value there. the last point I will make is I think there's value in finding free agents that haven't signed yet or have had disciplinary issues or are young and have performed in the past and are trying to find a new start for their career. Like some of those guys tend to go for, less money than they should because there's uncertainty surrounding their situation. And you have to spend, 2 or 3 at each position, I think, to get guys like that, or at least maybe 4 or 5 on your team, because they're at least playable free agents if they sign and they're instant point getters if they do, right? So I don't know. Those are some of my takeaways. Lastly, I'll mention quarterback position. We talked about it a little bit pre-auction. Like these guys that went and spent $77 on the Bucks versus, and you got 488 points. I did the math. That's $177 points difference between the Bucks and the Detroit Lions. If you're a competitive GM, you fucking spend money for the quarterback. Because that's what 177 divided by 15.
It's
like
the
that's
fucking
what,
highest differential position
right.
in fucking the goddamn game.
Yeah. So I mean, you can see that there's 2 that people thought were potentials, but even like this Panthers guy, that's 50 points difference. I mean, I think the Detroit one's a pretty good steal. Like Goff with new weapons, and like he's not going to score 315 points this year, I don't think. So it's like
there you
I think there is, I mean, yeah, people just pick whoever kind of comes left over. Great. That's okay if you're going to, redo it the next year, or like this $1 Seahawks, who's going to end up being their quarterback next year? I mean,
I think the thing is, if you save at a position, you get money for the other positions, and that's fine. And I think that was a good strategy. I use that strategy, and I got the Jags knowing that they're going to pick first, probably in the following draft. I got Lawrence. I considered dropping him because I'm like, well, okay, if I extend him, sends him to $10, and here it is. Like, okay, I could just pay 77 and get Brady. Like,
all right. So here's the question then. You spend $1 on the Seahawks, and you come over here and you need to make that difference up. You can spend 63 on Edwards. That gives you 96 points. Seahawks that's still less than just the quarterback himself. So if you get a $1 safety that scores you 20 points, you're still behind. Like obviously there's arguments to that. There's depth needs, there's a lot of stuff, but like if you're a competing team and you need a quarterback that season, for me it's almost ridiculous that you don't pay up at that spot. I'm sure we'll get some feedback on my take there, but I don't know. I think that's pretty interesting. What else on this jumps off the top of your? Was there any? Okay, let's talk about Adams. Like, because it was my purchase. I went and spent 450. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think about that price point? Were you surprised? If you had a different team, would have you liked to add him if you had the money? What's your thoughts?
Well, I know your thoughts were, I'll get Adams and then I can franchise them. My worry was, will everything be so expensive that the franchise tag becomes pretty gross? And that answer was not really, right? Go look at what the next guy is. I mean, Allen Robinson went for $300 versus your $450. It's like, that's a lot of speculation versus, I don't know.
I had it pegged out if it was the similar price point as last year for the top players, and Adams cost $600. The franchise tag was going to cost me $330 the following year, so I got a $120 discount the next year.
Yeah, I mean, like again, it's just like there were no fucking wide receivers, so everything got super expensive. You paid for a guy that you would franchise. None of these other fuckers you would franchise or transition tag, probably not at those prices. I mean, if you did, good on you. Devontae Parker, you want to pay fucking, $280 next year for Devontae Parker? He better be pretty fucking good this year.
Well, I guess
you know what I mean. So like,
are you paying Allen Robinson and AJ Green? Would you rather have Allen Robinson and AJ Green for Devontae Adams?
Depending on roster construction, I mean, long term, yeah, you definitely want Adams, I think, unless.
Are you more likely to move Allen Robinson at $300 or AJ Green at $150 or Devontae Adams? Probably Devontae Adams. I mean, probably the other two, right? So it just depends on.
I don't know, man. They're all really. You have to have a hell of a trade partner to figure any of those contracts out.
Yeah,
that comes down to the point. It's just like. I mean, AJ Green is a geezer. We don't know. He might be fucking completely done. and then like everyone else look on the list, like Sterling Shepard is a wild card, and so is Watkins. I guess so is Cobb.
You couldn't pay me.
I think
enough to
Marvin
spend
Jones is the only
164.
guy who I would confidently say is going to probably make value on that
You think
list.
Marvin
Everything
Jones
else,
is? Wow.
I
That's
think, dude, everyone fucking disrespects Marvin Jones. Go look at his stat line, dude. I tried to get Marvin, he just got too expensive. I couldn't afford him. I thought it was. I think if you're gonna pay, $195 for him, or what? I mean, 164 Sterling Shepard is way riskier.
I think that Jalen Guyton for $74 is probably one of the best picks up there. Like, talk about someone that could have 150 points and give you 50 cents on the
I don't
dollar,
know.
right?
He's number 4 right now. Like, I don't know, man.
Offense, a couple big plays in a week. Like, I had him early. I think the first season I played I can't remember if I was this league or CK, but he puts up a game where he has a deep one almost once every 4 or 5 weeks. It seems like where it can win.
I think that year Mike Williams was hurt, but fair enough.
That could be it. Yeah.
Nothing here you can tell me with 100% confidence is worth the money it was spent. I just said I think the most palatable is Marvin Jones. Yeah. And I think he will probably have the best points per dollar at the end of the year when we look at this list again.
Yep.
Except for like a random guy. Like, what if Sammy Watkins just becomes the guy in Green Bay? Then it's like you couldn't predict that. Right. Sterling Shepard comes back and then rises above Galladay, Tooney, and
1,100 yards.
Yeah, it's just like there's so much unknown on that list. Guess what? Adams is probably not very unknown. Allen Robinson is still unknown, man. Like we don't know if he just kind of stopped trying because he was fucking sick of being on a shitty team.
Yeah.
In a situation with a coach that he wasn't getting along with, and he could revitalize, or he could just be kind of like not what he used to be. We don't know. For me, it's like Marvin Jones. I'll say it again. That guy has been completely undervalued for like 5 years straight. In every situation, he over outperforms where his cost is.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to the running backs then. My strategy for the running backs as a team that's still in rebuild mode was to find some 1-year guys that I thought were lottery tickets if the guy in front of them goes down. And to me, that was Dearness Johnson and Samaje Perine, although it sounds like Perine could be losing touches to Chris Evans if Chris Evans keeps emerging. But still, for $160, I got 2 guys that I thought was I think, what did I have them pegged at? I think well over that. I think I had 125 for Dearness Johnson, and I had about the same for Perine. But other values on this that you like, Mark Ingram seems to be a good value if he's going to get 6 games, right? And he's going to be the lead back for 1 more year. He could carry you to victory a couple times. Burkhead, I can't get behind Burkhead, but who knows? And
Burkhead at $100 is fine, man. Like, Burkhead's gonna play.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Unless you're like one of these truthers that think the rookie that they drafted is getting 3 downs, and you need to simmer the fuck down with that shit. Like, he's on a good contract, and he's a multiversatile player that he can block. Like, he can kind of do it all. There's no way that guy's not getting on the field. And, he's probably, if he gets you 8 points a game the entire season, that would probably be like less than expected, but it's probably worth $100. Like, at that position, I don't know.
Yeah.
So like it's tough to like really, like others. For like example, Mike Davis might get cut. Geo.
Well, what about Craig Reynolds? Like that's an interesting one to me. He's right at $100. What's? I've seen him kind of being auctioned off a few times. Is he the number 2 in Detroit behind Jamal? I don't get it. Where's his role? Because you have Jamal Williams there, you have Swift. So where's Craig Reynolds justify $100?
If Swift gets hurt, because he gets hurt a lot, I don't know. Other than that, nothing. He's not doing kickoffs. He's not doing. I don't know.
What about Zeke? What was that price point? What you expected, or did you think?
Yeah, I think it should have been $400. I said that all along. I think when you look at this fucking list, you want points production this year. Zeke should have been $400, just like you paid $450 for Allen. They're the only 2 things that are really fucking sure things. And even McKissick, like, we're in a 0.5 point fucking PPR. Like you can't look at McKissick like he is in these other spots, especially with like how much they have in
Yep.
a full. Like, yeah, they might be down a lot. Sure, he might get yards. Like, I just, dude, it's $165. It's a lot, man. And then like everyone else, it's just like, okay, backups, YOLO. Hopefully I get lucky. Zeke was the only starter who will get a lot of work. So will Pollard. They play fast paced. The Cowboys are going to play faster pace. They're going to get a lot of plays off. That's good for receivers. It's good for their running backs. I just like, I don't care how down on Zeke you are. Like we saw fucking Melvin Gordon with like, didn't Melvin Gordon go for $400 while he was with Javonte Williams? That happened last year?
He went for like 3 something. I don't think I saw 400 on anybody until
Okay, whatever. It was
Adam.
close.
Yeah.
Right? And like, so what? Like Zeke, I mean, come on. Zeke's better than Melvin Gordon. I'm sorry. And so I think that's a below, but it's fair. And it's like, it's hard for somebody to go spend as much as you did on Adams. And who won Zeke in the end?
I can't remember. I think
That fucking
Packers-
guy was on the board
Packers
forever.
yeah, it just kept.
Everyone was
getting
raising him
pushed up.
$1 for like 3 days straight.
Just silly. Where Adams, I don't think I just kept the metal or the foot on the gas pedal. I didn't want to get stuck not getting him within the first 12 hours because you guys screw up my strategy. But yeah, I mean, like for me, I was all in on that. I had other guys. I think I only missed out on 3 other people on my list. So what I was surprised in is I didn't think there was as much value late as I kind of, like you said, I waited past that second or third tier and was thinking, well, there's still going to be some stuff left over. And then I noticed, man, it's getting pretty thin. So then I went a little bit heavier on some different players, but ended up with about $100 left over that I wish I would have spent on a D end. Yeah, I mean, it was very interesting to see how people were kind of being a little bit cautious in the beginning. I'm glad that I spent the money early and went and got the guys that I wanted and then kind of figured it out as I went. The other position, again, we talked a little bit about it, was the tight end spot. Was interesting because Roman was bidding up pretty much every one of the main ones on this page right away. But at the end of the day, prices kind of seem to level out with Ertz leading the way at $195. He could be an absolute target hog in the first part of the season with Hopkins being suspended. What jumps out at you on the tight end front?
Well, I thought 195 for Ertz was gross. But then you go over and look at Devontae Parker for 238, and you're like, yeah, it's pretty fucking good. I'll take it. Whatever.
Who's going to get you
I'm
more
sorry.
points this year, right? Like, I mean, and at a positional
Yeah.
disadvantage. Yeah.
Like, I mean, Ertz is a volume guy, and unless Trey McBride is really as ready, NFL ready as, people hope they are, I think it's still going to be a lot of Ertz this year. I
think it's a 1-year thing.
You're not going to look at a lot of prices and be like, oh, that was great. Obviously when he won Bray at 55 with with Gronkowski coming back, I thought that was a stupid deal. I thought it was a great deal. But then Gronkowski retired and it was just like, wait a minute. We didn't even we just kind of assumed he was coming back. If it was assumed that maybe he doesn't come back, that price would have been way higher. So that's obviously the best deal, I think.
Well, do we know that Tampa Bay is not going to sign an Ebron or a Cook, though, that are both free agents? Like a receiving tight end that could run those seam routes kind of thing. I mean, I don't know.
Well, not
Jared
to
Cook
spoil anything, but from what I've read, they like the tight ends they drafted. So
yeah. The other interesting one, Evan Ingram, I just seems like that guy's always more perceived value is way more than it actually is. But the other one is Taysom Hill. We talked a little bit about it in this league specifically because of his ability to throw some touchdowns for the team QB and then actually maybe get double points. Is that something that you think was considered when people were bidding on him and raising his price to $1.16?
yeah, I mean, I don't think it was. I mean, I think that's probably did Argo end up with him also?
I think I can't remember. I'll have to look. I think that is a
Well,
Roman.
the thing about Hill that's super intriguing, and this is what it was always intriguing about him, but in this league, I believe if there's quarterback points scored, right?
Right.
It goes to it, you double dip. So the quarterback team gets it and he gets it.
Right. You would needed to have the Saints QB and Hill for that to work out, though.
No. Well, yeah, if you did, I thought
Right.
the play was to get them both.
Yeah, you had to have
I
them
thought
both, or it doesn't work, right?
if I had, for example, if I had decided I was going to go off of Lawrence and came into this draft, I would have probably gone right after the Saints and I would have paired him with Hill and I would have just paid whatever it took.
Yeah,
Because
so,
that type of like, I don't know, glitch, so to say, is something that you can just mow over weeks with, right? It's like, oh, okay. Fucking Hill threw for 2 touchdowns or whatever. And you're like, I mean, just call
So
it.
Argo does have Hill, but he did not spend the $54 on the Saints and went with the Detroit there. I think Argo was wanted to do that. I think it makes sense. Like I went after Taysom Hill in pretty much every league. I wasn't going to spend that amount of money because I have Freiermuth in this league, but I just think that there's potential for him to have 10 to 12 total TDs. I mean, they're going to use him on the goal line and get 4 or 5 rushing TDs this season. He's going to pass for at least 2 with like some sort of weird formation where he's close to the goal line and he's running like an option and then just dumps it over to someone. And he's probably going to get a couple receiving ones where he breaks off a run and scores. So even with 10 to 12 TDs, like you're scoring what, 60 points on a baseline there?
I don't like saying when we have a coaching regime change. Like I think that's
okay.
dicey.
Well, I mean,
I
they're
will
going to
say
utilize him.
paying,
They paid him a shitload of money.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like ownership is gonna be like, dude, we paid this guy, fucking use him, whether you like it or not. That's what I would say is more than likely to happen. But if there's like,
too, man. I mean, that's an option. I mean, he's a Tim Tebow on crack cocaine, basically. Like we all know how much Tebow cost last year. I mean, it didn't make it through. It cost me $25. We know that shit.
Yeah, sure did.
That fucker. That was a bad bet from the get go. Yeah, I like that. I think the price point was right for him. I think he can, he's when it's tough to find a starting tight end. I don't think you're going to be able to put him out there and he's going to throw you a blank score any week, and he could probably put up 15 to 20 some weeks just with a crazy game that he's going to have once or twice. So,
real quick, I want to interject because you brought up Ingram. I think Ingram has the highest potential of all the top end guys.
Interesting.
Because who's the new head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Peterson.
What did Doug Peterson do in Philadelphia?
Threw it to Ertz and the other big boy. Yeah, got it. If he can stay on the field, man, I mean,
if he's healthy, he's got the talent. I'm just saying, like, that could be a pretty good sleeper. He was my guy.
Okay.
And then he got over $100. I'm like, fuck it, I can't do it. And then I kind of wish I did anyways, because like I said, everything got so fucking expensive. I ended up with Ferkster for $50. So
well, good luck with that. It's $125 cheaper than last year, I think, if I remember. He was the big free agent tight end last year.
I think people were down for that disappointment, and I think that's probably why I thought that was a good deal. But then again, those free agents, like those couple free agents, Ebron and Cook, that cheap, like I just would have done that if I knew, but
Well, I mean, for me, the thing that I learned about tight end is I was even more ecstatic that I drafted a tight end in the late first round and got someone that I can play at $19. And he scored 150 points last year. Some of the shit offers I got when I put him to the market were just incredible. Like now looking at how much a tight end at auction goes for. So I don't know. I think that for someone that's rebuilding a team and you need to make sure that you have a safe pick and you don't want to take too much risks in the first couple of years, I think drafting a tight end that you pretty much are certain that he's going to have a role in an offense. I think Freiermuth exceeded those expectations, so I got a little lucky there. But was relatively safe. Pretty smart strategy to lock one in and have them for 5 years and use them as trade bait if you need to along the way. So, all right, let's move on to D end, the old D end position. I was fucking astonished by some of the prices coming off the board, but now I'm looking for a D end. So I wish I would have paid the price for one of these guys early, and I did not. So. What jumps off the screen on the tight end position when you look at some of these high value guys or high price point guys?
Yeah, I mean they're all somehow cheap. They just are. Because you can look at this list and you can say what you want about points scored and average, but like, man, there was nothing in the DM position. And the guys that were going, there were guys who were like rotational guys, definitely not going to start, going for fucking 65 to 70 bucks, man. Like,
Well,
and
we
as
can
soon
pull
as
that
that's
up, too.
as soon as that started happening, I was just like, Von Miller and Cameron fucking Jordan were steals. Because you know you're getting the star pass rusher, not just a starter. We're not talking about a starter. We're talking about a star pass rusher, elitist high-end guy at the D end where there's clearly none. They just disappeared. Thank you, MFL. And this was some proof in the pudding, man. Like, even if you're down on fucking Clark, $100 is crazy fair for that guy. He was hurting at a down year. Like, if he comes back to like 75% of what his normal fucking self is, it's worth every cent. You know, even Brandon Graham, I mean, if he's not starting, he's the next rotational guy in a high rotation 4-3, you know? And so, like, I just think you look at all these, and then JJ Watt, I just couldn't believe he went that cheap. And I know he's got a red line on there because what happened, but I've already gone on record and said what I think about JJ Watt. He is not done.
Yeah,
He's not done. His stats say he's not done. He's healthy for the first time. And the stats of the fucking Arizona defense with him on the field versus him off the field are wow nuts. So I think now they have like, I think he's going to be good. So I think $76 for Watt, looking back on it, was just like, I would have fucking gave my left nut to pay that much.
Yeah, I think this one should be in red, obviously, because it's at $25 for Brandon Graham. But I mean, again, it's situational. It doesn't. I think that's maybe why I put it in yellow, because it's there was an outlier situation there, but it should probably be in white.
I did get a couple fourth or fifth men up for like $25. So when you think about that, it's like the dude starts. It just doesn't matter, man. Like, he starts, you know, and he's no starter. Here's the point. No starter should have been under $100 at the end. Zero starters should have been under $100.
A presumed starter, yeah. I mean, D4
presumed
probably,
starter, but like, I don't see nobody's taking JJ Watt's job unless he gets hurt. Right, that's it. Like, he's definitely doing it. And like, most of these guys are going to start. Even if I thought Harrison Phillips was a fucking outrageous spend at the time. Like, I was like, I'd never pay $131, knowing how much we're going to rotate our defensive line, right? Because we're going to probably keep the pass rushers in, like the outside linebackers, as much as possible. I just think he's not going to play that many snaps, but he starts. So it's like, I don't know, maybe it's not that expensive.
It's just crazy also comparing the cost in this auction versus cost in other 16-team auctions. Like a Harrison Phillips, at the most I see go in a 16-team auction was like
$10.
Yeah,
20,
well, 20 to 25, right? Like, so it just speaks to the positional scarcity and decisions you have to make. I did not put defensive tackles in there, but it is something that we should discuss. You know, I thought I saw their prices going up this year. So some of the tackles were going for $60, $75. I'm not 100% sure what they went for last year, but as the positional scarcity moved from because of all the linebackers now classified, or defense ends classified as linebackers, it seemed like a smart play would have been to get an outstanding defensive tackle and spend up to get them, so you can have more of flexibility playing one or two defensive tackles as opposed to having to, you know, play three defense ends and one of them being really shitty, right? So
yeah, I'm kind of bummed actually that you didn't, and I'll just tell you why, because I talked about this before. You kind of just touched on it, you know, like, if we look at the top at tackles that went, these are guys who are DNs, who are, a lot of them are DNs that are playing D tackles, or they're real like three techniques get at the quarterback. And like, yes, some are expensive, but if you look at it, it's like, I'll use Harrison Phillips as an example. He's actually a defensive tackle. We don't even know for sure if he's going to play in DT or if he's going to play in the DN.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's actually a chance our fucking depth chart comes out and he's a fucking defensive tackle. He gets switched. Like that's a real scenario because they're going to switch again in August. And so now, if you went after D tackles who were DNs but are being labeled wrong, or they're just playing this weird thing that puts them as a D tackle, and you're getting them for $50 instead of paying 131. Now, there's more D tackles to go around, but like when you talk about point differential, I got Hargraves for $46.
Yeah.
I'll bet money right now Hargraves scores more points than Harrison Phillips. I will
See,
bet money
that's
right
interesting. I mean, if you look at the defensive, I'll just throw out a few that I'm looking at off the screen here. Hargrave, $46 to you. You also got Sue for $5 because he's a free agent, right? Like, so there's
now. But
51.
still, he's like,
Yeah, no, I'm saying he's $51 spent on two tackles that are going to score points. So would you rather do that than and play two of those guys as opposed to spending $120 on a defense end that maybe plays a third of the snaps, right?
yeah, exactly. And again, I mean, it's hard to look at it that way, but we talked about it. And I just said, like, I think D tackle and cornerback is where you're going to be able to differentiate in savings versus points. And I feel like that's pretty much what happened. As long as you weren't getting obsessed with a big name in cornerbacks, like there were a lot of really good deals out there at cornerback. There's a lot of guys who went too cheap in points per dollar, like we're talking about, right? So if you could shore up, if I can say I'm going to start 3 corners or 2D tackles, knowing they're going to get 130 to 150 points, like I'm saving myself a lot of money on how much is a 150 point guaranteed D end going to cost you in the auction? And the answer was,
170.
150 to $170. Like, you can't guarantee me from anyone else under there that they're going to score as much as these other guys we're taking in these D tackles, or like I said, even in a quarterback position. And yes, the problem is you got to start 2, right? And I think the idea of needing, I think if you have the luxury of starting 3, like, congratulations. I think as a strategy, trying to go into the auction and make sure you got enough DNs to start 3.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like I have 2 and some like backup guys that'll rotate and get you a couple points and buys. I think that was probably the play. But if you went and paid for multiple DNs in the auction, I'm probably dented the wallet pretty hard.
I mean, essentially what you're saying is you could get Hargrave for 46. You could get that top costing safety, Harrison Smith, that scored 175 points last year. So that's 120. And then you could get, a Barr or someone like that at middle linebacker for $160 and still not have spent the money that it cost to get Cameron, right? So is that a better strategy now looking back, like to spread out that money and get, mid to upper tier player at linebacker, or mid linebacker, and then a top tier safety, and then maybe a top quarterback? Some of the quarterbacks are going for $30 too. So it's like, no more can you look at it as like, they're expendable because I can find them for $1. Like, I think you can do that.
I got a starter for $1.
Yeah.
But that's pretty outlier. I don't know how that happened. I just got lucky.
Yeah.
You know what happened? I know. I'll tell you exactly what happened. MFL had him like not scoring points. MFL, if you clicked on his projection of his stats, it said he's not going to score points next year. And if you go to any depth chart and you go to any beat writer, they're like, he's starting. It's not, he's in competition. So I was,
there's a lot of stats that are in NFL are just copy and pasted from last year and changing a couple numbers. Like, let's just,
I don't know how
there's not a lot of
it
thought
out.
That's put into some of the positional guys that are 3rd or 4th or 5th on the depth chart. I did not get a single DN in the auction. I got priced out, and then some of the guys that were going later that I had on my list, I think I had Basham on my list, and they just kept going up in price. And I said, okay, well, I have 3 that I can play, so I'm just going to load up at linebacker and hope that I can make a trade at some point. And I thought I did a pretty decent job of that. But Less, you know,
Yeah, I
there's
mean,
some-
injuries happen a lot to DNs, so that sucks. You know, like it's like you want to have a bunch of DNs, but it's just like you got to
Well, what are
eat
you gonna
shit at
do,
some
you know?
position. At this point, I say the play is pick one. Like eat shit at linebacker, or sorry, eat shit at running back, or eat shit at defensive end,
Yeah,
because you just can't fulfill it.
right. Yeah.
And quite frankly, it might be wide receiver now too. Looking at how much guys are retained in long-term contracts, et cetera, like this free agency auction for wide receiver was just like abysmal.
Well, Terrell Basham went for $33. He was on my list. I just didn't want to spend that. And then I think I had Melvin Ingram that went for more than that. I can't remember exactly where he went, but those were the guys that I kind of targeted. One of my strategies that's worked well for me is just targeting guys that are second parts of their career, or they're coming off a disappointing season, or they had some trouble off the field. I got Jalen Smith for that reason. I looked online and just making sure that he maybe he signs, maybe he doesn't, right? But like for $19 getting Jalen Smith, like who at one point was a pretty decent linebacker, if he hits, like, you know, that's instant trade bait middle of the season to where you can pass him off to a contender, get some draft capital, and then move on. So in my rebuild, that's been part of my strategy as well, just trying to find guys that I think, I mean, if you look at it, Von Miller was in that situation like 2 years ago, where we didn't know if he was going to play, and he was relatively cheap. Now he's costing 150 fucking bucks at auction. So, and he's much older than.
And
I
it's
think-
cheap. And
Yeah,
it's
and
cheap
and
because you
it's-
know he's not going to get changed. His designation is long. He's got a long-term deal there. They have stability at the coaching position, and that is not going to change. You got to, like, I don't know if they sign that guy's kind. I would sign him to fucking 2 to 3 years, like at least 2. Like it's just like he's going to be there, and he's worth $150, man. He just is. He is. Like all the previous stats you're going to look at is him at linebacker, not him at DN. He's going to beast. And then Cameron Jordan too. Like I just think those were the first guys to go. Like those were like in the top 5 first guys to finish in the auction. And it was like, wow, that's expensive. And then he got down. It's like, no, it wasn't. This should have been 200 probably. And that's gross, but scarcity position. Like, well, look at the running backs, right? And what are the running backs expected to score? Like, how much do you need? So, I don't know. Lesson learned, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure what else we want to talk about now, Ben. Was there any overall? I mean, I know we can't really dig into each individual team because we're going to do that as far as the individual team breakdowns when you got a few months to go through those, and we want to have some guests on to break down their division and talk some shit about their competition. What stuck out? Was there any bad etiquette? Was there a lot of sniping going on that you didn't expect? Were people waiting and not being a part of the auction early? Like, what are your overall thoughts about how the auction went down in general?
Well, look, man, you know who you are. I had some people coming after my fucking shit nonstop. And guess what? It's the same people that do it every year. But I got smart. And I started nominating guys I knew were going to get cut and putting them for a lot of money and sticking people with it. And that felt really good. I mean, that felt really good. Like using my information of guys who I knew had a name that somebody would say, well, Ben probably knows something. And watching them get stuck with them, that was fucking glorious. And so I'm going to continue just to do that. Because like, I'm not going to say.
Or you won't, and then you'll switch it
I'm
up.
the smartest guy, but we do a podcast. Like I do like to study into certain things. And there are people who will just say, hey man, this guy does homework. I'm just going to get on the guys he's on. That happens to a lot of the people in this league. And so for me, I try to play. I didn't have enough cap and like really a lot of positions to do this, but I did have some situations where I knew clearly guys were not only sniping me, they're waiting for the last second.
Well, in
And so it's like-
your defense, you were also in New York having
They're
guys
gonna-
hand you a fistful of kind bud. So I mean, you probably weren't as engaged in this auction. As
Oh, dude, I wasn't engaged in this auction at all. I was fucking completely out to lunch. Like this was the worst. I think like 2 years ago, I was in Vegas for one of these auctions. Like I'm never in a good spot for these fucking auctions. I don't know why it works that way, but no excuse. In the end, I don't know. I just wish because of my lack of being able to be engaged late, I wish I would have like played a little harder early. But what I didn't, again, like I knew there were guys out there who no matter what the player was or the situation was going to be, were going to bid $1 more than I had on a guy, no matter how expensive it was, and then expect me to like come back and so reset it and reset the clock. So I stuck a bunch of motherfuckers, and guess what? Fuck y'all. Gotcha.
Carry,
And I'm gonna do that a lot.
Carry on Johnson
Do
was
that a
signed for
lot.
$1. Did you know that?
Carry on Johnson for $1. Is that good?
Tariq Cohen was
Is he-
signed for
is
$1
he
too.
even
I wonder if
alive?
that guy's going to play again.
Is he even alive?
Interesting stuff. Who knows? I mean,
I think I saw. Okay, so I probably made a mistake. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. I knew I didn't want to leave a lot of guys on my taxi squad that were there. And so I was just going to bite the bullet on roster positions and probably have too many rookies on my spot. So I wanted to get some rookies to replace that, but I probably shouldn't have with the amount of money I had, taking some shots on some undrafted safeties, stuff like that. Because in the end, there was really good deals at the end. There was people that went really cheap that probably shouldn't have. And I think that's what we're just going to find. Like, it gets all gross, but you probably should just be spending a shitload of money and then spending $1 to $5 on just a fucking million darts, especially, the free agency. I mean, if you want to go into that a little more, you got Anthony Barr and like some of these guys just going so cheap that like there's a chance they don't make a team. Or even Schobert, I think Schobert went for $22 or something.
he went for more than that. I think that was
I don't
another
know.
league.
I think Argo has them.
Yeah, I was
I
bidding
mean-
on him. I would have bid more than $22.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, like
there's
that,
guys like
that stuff.
fuck, I just passed him. Stefan Tuitt, right? Like he went for $6. Like, but he didn't even sign last year.
Wait, didn't Tuitt retire for the Steelers?
I mean, Joe Schobert went for 26. Actually, I mean,
Yeah. I told you it's stupid. It's just dumb. It's like,
yeah. I mean, he's
okay.
gonna play somewhere. You would think he's in his 7th year or something like that.
Yeah, Alex Ogletree, free agent for $12. Like these things don't ruin your roster. You
Kerry
like
Hyder went
Anthony
for
Hitchens,
$24.
Anthony Hitchens, free agent, $15. You're not going to lose the league if this guy doesn't work out. But what happens if Anthony Hitchens is fucking signing as a starting middle linebacker, dude? Like that's a league winner for you.
Carlos Dunlap went for 39. Shit.
Yeah, I mean, fuck, he's gonna get a team. I don't know. Like, I think when you're talking risk rewards, you want like a fucking Guyton or a Sammy Watkins for those prices, or you wanted to start like taking a Julio Jones, for example. What do you go 33 on that list? I mean, that's just like,
Well, that's too cheap. I paid.
there's
36
the
for him and
correct
another
answer. And the
16
correct
like that.
answer is the guy should get a team. How often do they not get a team? Not very high percentages. Even if it's 50-50, the auction prices are not representing that. You can't get Julio Jones for 33 and Sammy Watkins for what, 130 or whatever he went. And like, if Julio gets a team, there's this, you can't argue they're not the same player, right? And whatever.
He's going to
potential
score
high
more
side-
than 38 points this year if he lands on a team. I mean,
just my point is like, he should have been half of Sammy if you want to look at it that way. But that's if it's 50-50. I just think injuries are going to happen. We know preseason shit happens all the time. You guys get teams, man, like especially on defense. You're like, oh shit, lost our middle linebacker. Who do we need? Well, Anthony Hitchens lost a step, but he's still 10 times better than anything we got. Let's sign him and put him at middle linebacker. Okay. Like
let's pull up your team, and then the thing we're going to end on is you and me both talking about our favorite auction winning player. How about that?
All right, that's
Pull
fine.
your team up and maybe a little bit of the thought process behind it, and then we'll call it.
I guess this is good, so I don't have to like talk about my team later. We can talk about everyone else's team.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
When we do this segment.
I like to explain why I did things. Okay, so here's your list of guys that you won the auction on. Somewhere around in here is where you were, probably super stoned. But what was your favorite?
Against my will, by the way.
What was your favorite winning auction bid?
I think it's Hargraves, to be totally honest, at that price. At the next is Antonio Hamilton, because I just getting a starting guy for $1, like fuck off, like he's young too. I don't know. It's just there's things like that. It's just like, okay, I got a guy for 5 years. Like, what if he starts for 5 years at $1? That's great. I
Right.
usually you hit that in the draft, right? Like, and then you only get him for 2 years before you have to extend. So I don't know. So yeah,
But
like,
he's
oh,
only scheduled to get.
he's only
18
gonna get
tackles.
18 tackles. Yeah. Okay. No, ask any beat writer for Arizona. He started, and that's it. And then like
Sorry.
I will go on record saying I really don't think I had a good auction. I think I had a terrible auction. I think my team's a fucking dumpster fire. The fact I didn't go pay $40 to $50 for that second tier of safeties, again, second tier, where I thought there was good value, really like just bit me in the ass later. And, it is what it is. I had a pivot strategy and just like, I'm pretty weak at too many positions and I'm not super happy about it.
Can
But
we
I did
clear up
actually.
Can we
Go
clear up
ahead.
one more thing too, just for record keeping?
Yes.
Is it like I thought we made a rule that anybody had to be in the system prior to the auction starting? Were there people being
No.
added as the auction were started? Because we did a
Yes.
whole thing I think it was a year and a half ago, where you told the commissioner that you were going to create a list and then that would be uploaded to the system. But it wasn't going to be possible for people to add people as the auction or after the auction had already started.
Yeah, but then what happened is we gave them like 100 names, and it's just like these guys aren't even going to get drafted. So it's like, fuck this, like do it as you go. Like it's just like I would have, if it would have had to been pre, I wish think I would have just spammed the shit out of it. But like for
So
me,
then you're just having them do all the people and blah blah blah. It doesn't
Well,
really
no,
matter,
look.
I don't think. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what happened. I saw 10 to 15 guys get nominated that were added to the system that 100% were not in the system when we drafted or before we started the auction. I know because they were on my list. And so I looked through all the message boards and there's nothing. Okay. So I said, they're just emailing the commish personally. So I did it and he added them.
Okay.
And then I had him add like 5 guys and I got 3 of them. And
I'm telling you right now, I'm never gonna put that amount of work in, so I don't give a fuck.
No, but people, I'm telling you, like a couple of people, like there's 2 guys that I added that somebody else got, and they'll thank me later.
I think the funniest
Period.
part was though that someone could have probably made up a name and had it added into the auction list, and someone was going to bid at least $5 on it. Like at some point, someone mentioned that. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah,
it seemed like that at times.
I would actually say this was the best way in the history that I've seen it been able to be done. I don't care if people think that it's like deceitful, but the problem is if I fucking post. So this is why it happened. I had to post 20 guys because everyone would know who I wanted if I only posted 5. So I'd have to post 20 fucking undrafted free agents so people would get off my dick.
Right. Well, you're
if
just
I
so
post
good at
5,
this.
if I post 5, they're making me pay $20. I'm looking at you, Moose, motherfucker, and everyone else. They're gonna make me pay. They already made me pay for guys I never heard of. It's fine, but I don't like tipping hats of who I'm going to fucking bid on.
Right. No,
and by posting it in a message board, you do that. So when I saw other people were doing that, I said, I don't give a fuck as long as they get in the system. I'm not going to get them for $1, although some of them did go for $1. Like, I want to make sure they're in the system. So as I saw other people doing it, I was actually very happy. I'm like, okay, I'll send it to commission. He did it. I don't even think he responded. He just put it in. So it's like, yes, the commission plays in our league. He does know. He's the one guy who knows who's putting to the system. But why the fuck do we need to be privy to that information, man? Otherwise, I'm just going to spam the fuck out of him, and the commission is going to spend an entire day adding people to the system.
Yeah, no,
guys, I'm not going to draft.
I understand. I mean, they still have to go through 12 hours before someone can bid on it. The smart GMs, if they have 4 guys they want, they're going to spam 10 of them and add them, and then they're going to start.
If there's any controversy about it, I would say this is just the play moving forward, because quite frankly, I kept seeing guys pop up. I'm like, fuck, that's my guy. And then he get a little, go up. I'm like, okay, well, I have a lot of reserve guys, so I'll just let him go. But I come up looking back, I probably should have been a little more aggressive because he went super cheap. A lot of the guys get added to the system. I'm an advocate of that. Most people just don't give a fuck, but it's worked out for me in the past.
So I had quite a bit of cash. Obviously my strategy was different because I was going to spend almost half of it on Devontae Adams, but I was pretty happy to get Dearness Johnson for $76. I'm high on him for the next 3 years probably. I think he's in a 1 year contract and then he could land somewhere else or be the backup. So I think that's a pretty fair price for him. I liked I like getting Justin Watson for $35. It could work out. He could be my Braxton Berrios, or he could just be shit and whatever. It is what it is. I like Jalen Smith as a $19 gamble for someone that's still relatively young and has proven production. And then I just took flat. Like my overall strategy and some of this stuff as I got like a little bit deeper into the depth charts was I looked for guys that were third or fourth on the depth chart that had less than 4 or 5 years of experience, and maybe stick around if somebody else gets hurt, so they get more time. And they prove themselves, they might move up, and if I get someone like that for $6, then great. Like Blake Lynch for me for $8. Like I think he's third or fourth on the depth chart in Minnesota. Like he's third year player. Like give him some opportunity. Someone gets hurt. Like next thing you know, he's got a 75-point season. So that was kind of my strat. I don't know the defense players as good as some of these gents in the league, especially like someone like you, Ben. So I just try to be pretty selective. I was happy to get Maben Reeves and Hewitt for that total price of $69. It seemed like a lot for Reeves at that point, but getting both of them, like I feel like one of those guys is going to produce for me. So some of the thoughts behind what I did in the auction, and we'll see how it works out. But I don't know, man. Any last minute thoughts before we wrap this up? It's been a good one. Been a decent conversation about NFT and the auction.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think relying on the auction for top end roster building is just for the birds.
Relying on what?
You just like relying on, like, if you need top end production at a position, like you got Adams, cost $450 this year, and you can franchise him next year. That's great, but like everything else, man, like there's not a lot of guys that, and I saw go where you're like, oh, I want to sign a long-term deal, right? So
that's the other thing.
Unless you're gonna just pay out your ass and get guys at top end position, like I think eventually you just need to, like you said, like throw a lot of darts at the end, just try and get cheap guys that have a chance. And like, it sucks to play that much of a luck game, but you can't get guaranteed points at every position. It's just not possible, man. Not through the auction. You can do it with good drafting and good trading, but you can't go in the auction to be like, oh, I filled all my positions, I feel great. It's like, I had 5 needs and I feel good. Like, no, man, like, sorry, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I learned that lesson last year.
Even with how much cap you and Argo have, I don't think either you are like through the moon ecstatic about the results, like it just is what it is.
I mean, I think the only thing you can do is, and I'm sure Argo would agree with this, you have a strategy in place. It's going to get a little bit discombobulated, but you have to execute it to the best of your ability with the cap you have and based off of where you're at in your build and how competitive you're going to be. I wasn't disappointed because I got the guys that are on my list outside of maybe 3 guys. Like I pivoted from Reggie Roberson because Robin all of a sudden decided that he was going to spend $35 on a guy that I have in all 3 other leagues that we play in. But he did his independent research, so that's cool. And then went and got Racey McNath, right? Like, but like, was I going to spend $35 on Roberson? No, I mean, it was. I had a limit, and it was exhausted, and that was it, right? So, yeah, I mean, I'm not overly excited about my team, but I feel like I have enough pieces to move around, and if a couple people hit, like I can sell them and get more pieces, and that's where I'm at in my process. I mean, will I keep Devontae Adams? I don't know, man. Like if some team comes hollering next year and wants to franchise tag him and he wants to give me, some draft picks and they think they have a shot in winning, like I'm selling Devontae Adams, right? Like unless I feel like I can win and win that year. So it'll just be interesting to see how it all plays out, right? But it's exciting. It's a whole different animal, as we've said many times, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. I don't think if most people outside of this league saw a roster and you said, hey, this is my fantasy football team, I think most people would be like, who the fuck are these people? And like, what the hell is wrong
Yep.
with you? Right. And so that's kind of like that's why I enjoy this league, is because it's really for people that are fucking degenerates and, want to torture themselves year over year. So pretty
I think
exciting
that's
stuff.
it. Yeah. Living with lots of disappointment. That's what we get.
All right, my man, I got to wrap this up, but it will be up live shortly. Just a little follow up. We want to start getting people on in their division. So if you really want to be on and talk shit, we're going to start doing a weekly pod with divisional breakdowns, and we'd like to at least have one guest per division join us. We can have up to two probably and still make it pretty copacetic. So holler at your boys, and we're ready to keep this rolling throughout the off season. So everybody have a good rest of your week, and we'll talk soon. Peace.
You.